Hello. It is about 10 o'clock on a day that is not a Tuesday or Thursday, I'm pretty sure. Can never be sure about anything, really. I mean, for all we know, we're like some people say we're in a holographic simulation and that this would be a Wednesday, not Wednesday. It's not ND, it's DN, Wednesday. That could be just an artificial construct. It might be like glurp or blufna or dingo bong or something in the universe that's created our simulation that we're in. I don't know why I'm talking about that particularly. Just thought I'd, start out with something that wasn't apropos to what I'm doing. On Monday, I said I had a plan for today, and I'm sure I did. I know some of it, so we'll just keep going here. I'm tired today. Just didn't sleep that well last night. The big thing was that this week we, so to speak, literally turned the page on the Savoia model, having completed the interior of the model. Okay, because as I have mentioned many times, the fuselage lifts up off of the model so that you can see the interior of the detail of the inside of the plane. And I also finished the engine. Okay, that's done. And can be seen right here. It's upside down because it just sets better that way. But there it is, and I can show it to you. Show it to you up close. Came out, I think it came out really quite well. Even the detail on whatever these things are in the back that are painted several different colors. Okay, and I don't know if you can see it, but that little bit there, that's a brighter shade than the body of the engine, and the glossy black stuff came out okay. I was a little concerned. I was going to spray paint it, and then decided that would be a bad idea, and then brushed it on, and the paint actually worked really quite well, better than it did when I tested it. So yes, turned the page on the model, and I'm now working on the enclosure for the engine. Okay, which are those bits there. Bit onto there as well. So I can see up close. If you look at these, you can see there's this little spot there, a very nice round circle. So what happened is that when this was molded, and it even has detail on the inside, it was done pretty well, but it's got these parts end up with these circles on them. Oh, I bet there's one on here too. Oh, that, I didn't check that before. I'm going to have to either fill that in like I did with these or sand that out. I'm not sure which. This might be shallow enough that it might be better off just sanding it out. Because I want this part to be removable so that you can see the engine underneath it. The engine will sit here like this. I think that's how it goes. Front of it goes on the short side. I've tested this a couple of times, and the front goes on. There's little tabs on the base and those little slots in the engine mount. Goes on like that. And then this part goes over this. Camera doing pan in on it or whatever. It's weird on my monitor. These things look orange. They're really a very bright red, and they're slippery. Yeah, I can hold it like this, but then you can't see what I'm doing. If I hold it like, there we go. So when these cowlings are put on, this goes over this like that, and then you can't see this thing underneath with all the detail on it. And so I'm thinking this actually would have been in real life an access panel, okay, and it would have been removable. And so I'm going to try to get it so that it's removable. And if you remove it, you'll see the inside of it, and the inside of it has this mess here. It's just a mess. It's not even a clean circle. Okay, it's just yucky. It's a yucky thing. You don't get to see. Yeah, I'm going to have to just fill that in. If this filler worked, I'll find out. This one's going to be cemented on. So, the inside of it's not going to be that critical. The instructions, if you look at the instructions here, suggest cementing the engine onto the mount and then putting the surround around it after it's been installed like this. But I don't want to do that because this whole thing, the mount, not the engine, but the mounting thing, the cowling, I guess, has to be painted, spray painted red on the outside and painted metallic on the inside because it's made out of metal, right? That's the way the instructions work. But when it's cemented together, there's these seams, especially here, okay, that are highly visible. And I don't want them to be there. I want it to be like one solid piece without seams showing. So what I'm hoping, and I'll test that a little bit later today, is that I can make this container area, this cowling, and then put the engine into it after it's assembled. I don't know if that's the case or not. These are the exhaust pipes. You say, well, why are they here? Well, I painted them gunmetal. And one of the things I was planning to do today is test to see if I can do something to make it look like it's been heated. So, you know how metal, like exhaust pipes in particular, when they're heated, will get kind of a bluish color. So I'm going to try a couple of different things on probably this piece of cardboard or this one, but this one probably, it's easier to use. Some different washes or overcoats to see if I can make that happen. And if I can't, then I just won't. These eventually get cemented here. There's little holes here that are supposed to line up with they're supposed to line up with little protuberances on the, I guess like that. I'm not. really seeing it happen here. No, that'll be a thing when it comes time to do that. Needs to get them to fit in there like that so that they don't just keep popping out. No, anyway, it's supposed to, oh, broke my resolution. I was going to not be saying that word anymore. I just did. I'll be saying nonetheless or something like that. Well, going back to these little round bits, these round spots, these were just like the one here, but there's a mold mark put in there. Because they're just are. I don't know why. The plastic models have those all over. I got this new filler, and it was very liquid, so it filled the hole quite nicely, but I don't know how well it holds up to sanding. So one of the things today is, and maybe I'll get started with that, is to try to sand that down so that the indentation, the hole just doesn't show anymore. So maybe I'll just start that, right? Just get my sanding block out. Get some, I think I'm going to try, not that, that's way too coarse. I'm looking for some 600 grit. 800. I've got more. I don't have to be using these tiny bits, but there it is. Brand new, fresh 600 bit piece of sandpaper that apparently I know what grit that is, but it's really, really coarse. It would just tear things up. The coarser the sandpaper, the lower the number, lower the the lower the number on the sandpaper, the coarser the grit. The coarser the grit, the more quickly it will sand things away. Like this is 150. Okay, it's very rough. It'll cut things really swiftly, but it also leaves scratch marks. Okay, and those, if this is painted metallic, which it will be, it'll not look very good. It'll be all full of scratch marks, and so there's this compromise between sanding things down quickly and leaving scratch marks, which then have to be polished out, and sometimes that takes longer than if I just used a finer grade of sandpaper to begin with. I'm using 600 because no, I haven't used this before, this particular filler. So I don't know how hard it is in terms of how it reacts to being sanded. I would usually use an 800 grit, which I will sooner or later. Sooner. The stuff seems to sand pretty well. That is to say that I have this other filler that it doesn't dry hard enough to sand. Okay, what's happened here, and I was a little concerned about that, is that there isn't enough of it. Okay, it filled the circle, but Probably can't see it, but I can feel it. There's still a raised edge around it. It is, as I run my thumb up here, it goes down. And so this one at least isn't filled, which means it's still going to show. Not as badly as it did before. It's going to show like a ring instead of a depressed circle. It's going to show as a ring. So I'm going to put more on there. Yeah, the stuff shrinks more than I thought it would. I need to remember that. Like I said, I hadn't really used this before. Didn't know how much to put on here. But what I've learned now is that it filled the circle really nicely. It just filled it, as you can see. A very nice, clean circle. But it is below the edge of the circle. So when I use this now, I need to remember that it shrinks a lot as it dries, which isn't a surprise because it's very liquid. There's a lot of solvent in it. This one's pretty close, but the stuff sands. It's hard enough to sand. So what I need to do is, now that I've learned my lesson here, is put enough on here so that it overflows the edge. Okay. And what that will mean, well, it means a couple of things. One is I'm not going to be gluing this stuff together today because it worked, but then it didn't work. Okay, what I mean is that this dissolved putty hardens so that it can be sanded, which means that it will work as a filler. That part will be okay, but I need to put an excess in so that it goes up over the edge. And then I can sand it down like this, went over the edge just a little bit. You can see that there. I can sand it down. But as it is, it didn't quite fill it. This one's not too bad. Can almost not feel it. But it didn't quite feel it because when it shrank, it went below the edge. It went below the edge. So there's still a depression and indentation there. Well, I can still test fit this stuff. I'm going to do that. When I'm going to find out these parts are going to be hard to hold. You're going to see me fumbling here now for a while. I'm just going to pick up parts and try to hold them together, and then they won't hold together, and then they're going to be fumbled around. It looks like these, I can't just cement these together like this. I mean, I could, but what would happen is if I cemented these together, it's not going to stay lined up. I can't like put an alligator clip on it or anything else because it's slippery and it's not flat. This is all supposed to come together like this. This is almost worse than the cage of the canopy, just in terms of getting the parts to fit. Then you can see the seam down there is not that critical. It makes sense that if this was a real thing, okay, not just a plastic model of a real thing, it makes sense that there would be a line there because they'd be separate panels. Okay. In fact, the line even extends up here as though that were a separate panel. The problem comes up here at the nose where these two parts come together. And this is like right up on the top in the back of the plane. That seam is the one that I want to get rid of. It really helps if I have the right side. The thing I want to know, I'm not sure how I can do this. What I might end up doing is using a little rubber cement, which will hold it in place, but can be rubbed off. And if I use it before I do anything like cement these pieces together, it might hold well enough for me to test whether I can insert the engine into this after this is put together. Again, why I really want to be able to do that. Almost had it. It's actually an alignment pin. Huh. One alignment pin there. Some sighing going on here already today. Well, that's great. I mean, I can hold it like that, but it does me no good because it's upside down. This is fun to watch, isn't it? I mean, my fingers are not grasping. Maybe I should put rubber cement on my fingertips so that they can grab on, can hold on to things and not have it slide away. Well, this is going to be quite, I'm going to have to, I'm definitely going to be using contact cement when I put this together because the pieces will need to hold and be adjusted after they hold. An object lesson, if anybody wonders why I don't use CA glue, okay, this is the absolute positively why reason I don't use CA glue, because you can see, me not being able to get these parts in place. I want them to hold on to each other, but they need so that they don't keep falling off. But I need to have them be adjustable after they are sort of put into place. Okay, now if I had more hands, this is what I need it to be like. Okay, it needs to be, wow. I'm going to have to get these together back here. This is pretty fun. This is going to end up using the entire stream, just attempting to test fit these parts so that I can see if I can get the engine in while this is assembled. Yeah. Well, I'm going to say that I'm going to accomplish next to nothing today. I am going to succeed in accomplishing almost nothing today because I need to put more filler on these, and then that needs to dry and then be sanded down. And I need to fill this one in at the same time and do the same thing. These are really close, okay, but it shrank a lot. So this is what I'm going to accomplish today. I am going to test different washes and highlights to see if I can make these look like they've been heated. I am going to refill these, additionally fill these and fill this so that the circles hopefully will pretty much disappear once they're painted. At least they won't be very obvious, okay, like they would be before I put any filler in. I am going to, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to cement the halves of these together so that I can clean up the seams, so I can clean up the seams later. And that's going to be a little bit of a trick because they are not a smooth surface. They're radiators. So the seam is going to be, I have to do that in a way that doesn't upset that. Okay. Let's see what I mean. Okay, that's that. Test fit this to see if it fits okay. Then that one actually can be primed. Ta-da. Well, rubber cement time. And again, I'm using this to temporarily hold these parts together because it's pretty clear that as I was fumbling with these for the last, almost 15 minutes, that I can't hold them in place. So I can test to see whether I can get the engine installed after that's assembled. And at some point, I'll explain more about why that's something I need to be able to do, if at all possible. I'm not really recommending this. If you're looking at this as a how-to show, I'm not really recommending this as a thing to do. This is an act of model-making desperation, kind of. But I know that the rubber cement doesn't dissolve the plastic, and it'll just rub off when I'm done, when it gets disassembled. But it will hold these things in place temporarily. Not being terribly careful with this, like I said, it's just going to rub off later. With rubber cement, it's a contact cement, so it works best when it's applied to both surfaces. And then the surfaces grab onto each other. This will work. Why wouldn't it? Bring this off with a toothpick, partially so I can reuse the toothpick because I'm really cheap, but also partially because if it's on the toothpick and the toothpick touches something, it's going to just get spread around. Now, I'm going to be doing a few things. It's not going to take a whole lot of time today. And so I'm going to maybe go on and do some other things. I might paint. I have this really cool, this comes with there's a Porco Rosso that sits inside the plane, but there's also a stand-up minifig. that even has a stand to stand on. I guess is that why it's called a stand? See it like that. Stand on the stand. It's a very detailed minifig, and that will be it'll be interesting to paint that. You know, it's a little bigger than the one that's in the cockpit of the plane, so it should theoretically be a little bit easier to paint. But that remains to be seen, doesn't it? The so I could work on that. I could just quit early and get ready for my trip next week. I need to talk about that. I was planning to do a stream on Friday. That was the plan, to do a stream on Friday. Now this stuff should grip itself, kind of. Yeah, it kind of does. And the weather forecast was a slight chance of snow. When I talked about it on Monday, it was going to be a slight chance of snow after 1 o'clock. So the plan at that point was, oh, this actually worked really. Sometimes things just work, you know? And it's just kind of a shock when it does. So this is what it's going to look like when it's assembled. And you can see there's these seams here that have rubber cement on them that I'm going to rub off. And then the seam across the front here, from here to here, needs, except for that, to be like a radiator bit in back. I'm going to have to look at that through the head magnifier. It looks like there's little bits here. Well, anyway, there. So here's the test. Can I put this into here? It looks like it's fine. Yeah, it's setting right in there. Okay, that is excellent news, which I will explain in a bit. And then will this, in this this bit I'm not going to cement on. I want this to be removable. You can see why. See, there's the detail of the engine inside there. Go to whatever those are, carburetors maybe. I'm not sure. But I want this is, I'm going to say, this is like a maintenance hatch on the top of the cowling, right? It just is. And I want it to come off for maintenance so that there can be access to that, but also so that one can see it. I mean, why go if you can barely see it, you can look down the front of the engine like that, okay? But you can barely see it, so this fits nicely on there. Okay, now, and then this will go on the front like this. And this part will be cemented on. We should probably test to see if it actually works, right? It doesn't go on. Is the engine not in right? Hmm. No, it's setting just right. Good thing I'm testing this now, I think. No, well, it just needed to be turned. Okay, this part will be cemented on. After, it'll be one of the last things. It'll be after this whole thing is painted. Okay, so why was it important to find out if this engine could go in after this was assembled? It's important because this whole thing needs to be painted silver, well, metallic on the inside because it's made out of metal. And the painting instructions actually take that into account, which is really pretty cool, that the inside of this would not have been painted. It would just be aluminum, right? And so that would all be painted, but more importantly, the outside needs to be spray painted red, the red of the Porco Rosso plane. I could just leave it like this, but it doesn't look that good, right? I mean, it's raw plastic. So it's molded in red for people who don't want to paint it, but I do. And it says, do paint it. But it says paint it after this bit and this bit are added and the engine is in there. And then somehow or other, very carefully mask this so that the engine, okay, doesn't get any of the red paint on it. Well, that's not going to happen. I mean, it could. It would just be a really difficult thing to do. But the easier thing to do, which is what I'm going to do, is assemble these three parts like this. Okay. Dust on there. And then I can get rid of the seams, especially the ones along here. I can sand those out so that they don't show. And then paint the inside, mask the edges, just the edges. Okay. Because it'll be actually cemented, not just rubber cemented, but cemented, so it won't fall apart. And then I can spray paint the outside of it so that it looks really good. And then I'm going to do this part separately because this is going to be not attached. It's just going to be set on there because it's a removable access panel. I want it to be that. The one that goes up here is actually removable. It's designed to not be cemented on. The one that covers the entire engine so you can see the engine. But I want you to be able to see this bit back here. And then this will be cemented on, but it will be cemented on after the engine is installed. Okay. And this will be painted separately as well. And that goes on. And it's fine that there is a seam there because this is clearly a separate component, as is the axis. Getting rid of the seams. I want to get rid of the seams, and what I mean by that is where the two parts come together, where they're cemented together. I want to get rid of them where it would otherwise just be a single piece of metal and you wouldn't have a seam. Okay. I'm not going to get rid of them like along here where it would be clear that that was a separate panel. All right. And so, yeah, I mean, It is. It's put together. It's the way it should be. And the engine does slide into place. There's really cool detail on this. There's air intakes. Okay, on either side of this. I don't know if you noticed them, but they actually perforated the side of the panel here. They actually perforated that where these line up. They line up with that. This is a well-designed model. Much better than the Apollo that I was working on, and better than the submarine in terms of just the detail and how it's put together. I'm not going to need this for a while. I'm going to put this into I am done with that part box, which is over there. And maybe I'll show that later because I don't have that much to do today. I can show the parts that are done, and then I can put this into the box with the parts that are done. Okay. So the rubber cement trick worked. This is ready to be primed. And it can be painted. And then there's a radiator part down here that needs to be painted gold. And I might paint that first before I spray paint the red and then just mask it over. I actually think I'm going to do that. I think I can pull that off with some careful masking. It would look better with a nice sharp masked edge than it would if I tried to paint and get the edge right. Not that I couldn't do that. I think I'm capable of doing that, but it would be better if I could mask that. I'll try to remember that that's what I was planning to do when I get around to doing something. Okay. Since I'm not going to get these cemented and the cement isn't going to dry, what I'm talking about are these things that are off camera. Okay. These radiators go right on the side here on these slots. I'm not going to get those done, and the cement isn't going to dry enough to clean up the seams yet today. So it doesn't matter when I get around to doing them, but I will, because I've got way more time than I've got stuff to do today. Hi. Green putty. I hadn't heard of that. So is it just like slides into the seam? You just push it in, kind of like I do with some other stuff I've got. Okay. Well, thank you for the tip. So this is held together with rubber cement, and it does. It just comes apart. And I should be able to, without damaging the surface. That worked. So I'll just say that, if you are looking at this as sort of a how to do thing, I didn't want to say do this because I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but it worked well. It held those pieces in place so I could test fit them, and it cleans right up. Pretty nice. Thanks for dropping in again. I was test fitting the engine enclosure to make sure that I could install the engine after it was painted. That fast? Oh, wow. Yeah, everything else takes like 24 hours to harden it enough to sand. So it's just, is that the brand name, Green Putty? That's a good reason why you should watch this stream. You should watch this stream because old Brogger comes on, who is an amazing modeler. I mean, he just builds all sorts of incredible stuff from scratch, not just putting together plastic models. And so when I don't know what I'm doing, Brogger will say, do this. And it's always good advice like that. It's from Green Stuff World. Does that mean it's environmentally sound, or it's just colored green, or both? But see, you can learn things from old Brager, who knows what he's doing. Okay, well, this is going to turn out okay eventually. And the eventually, I haven't talked about that yet, is when is that eventually going to happen? Because I have to be away for 2 weeks starting Friday, and I'll be back around the 27th. The return date isn't quite set yet. Just a family thing. It's not like a real emergency or anything. It's not awful, but a family member is having some foot surgery. I'll just say that, and um, lives alone, and so is going to be mobility limited for a while. Okay, I'm definitely going to look that up, because so far, this stuff that I have on here has been the only thing that's kind of worked at all as a filler. The thing that's been working closest to it has been um, drywall filler, spackling compound. So I was, poking around online and found Mr. Dissolved Putty, Mr. Dissolved Putty from Mr. Hobby, which is, I have no idea if I'm using it correctly or not. I haven't done translate on it. But this worked. This was sandable, but it's very, very liquid. There's a lot of solvent in it. And so even though it filled the space beautifully, right? I mean, nice, clean, sharp edges, it shrank so that it sunk down into it, and so there's still an edge around it. These are those round holes that come with every model that shouldn't be there, that are really, really annoying. So is the green stuff, would it fill? I mean, these things are maybe, they can go as deep as a 64th of an inch, usually a little less than that. What would that be? A tenth of a millimeter. Okay. I mean, they're really a fifth of a millimeter, maybe 20%. They're really pretty shallow, but they're really also very obvious. Yeah. Would the green putty work on that then too? I'm old school. Yeah, thank you. Or what I'll do, okay, I'm going to do it the old fashioned way. Everybody watching this you can be amused by what I'm about to do. You want to be amused? I'm going to write it down on a piece of paper and carry it with me. You can still do this, Here, just watch. I know this is almost like going back to the Middle Ages, but do that, and then I've got it. Um, it's almost like having a smartphone. This is kind of like having a smartphone, in that I can pick this up and carry it with me, and when I want to see it again, I can just look at it. It's incredible. Um, but yeah, there. Now, I've got this, and I can put it in my pocket just like I would, say, a smartphone. And then I can pull it out and I can look at it, and I don't even have to scroll through anything. I don't have to do any of that or any of this or anything. I can just look at it. It's just a really old-fashioned thing, but it actually just it works. Watch, I'm going to fold. I don't even need to fold it, but it fits in my pocket better that way. Now I've got it with me. Huh. Okay. That was actually fun to be cynical about that, you know, about how, things that have worked for maybe, oh, 5 or 6 thousand years, like writing something down, still can be done. Okay. Well, I don't have green putty. I do have this stuff, which filled the holes, but I need more of it on there. So I'm going to use this toothpick as an applicator, and I'm going to put enough on here so that it extends beyond the edges of the circles. I know it's messy, but that way I know it's filled in, and then I can just sand it down. There's going to be less of it after that dries. Trust me, this is one thing I am. No, I shouldn't say that. If I say I'm pretty sure this is going to work, then there's a opportunity for it to not work. So far, when I've been skeptical about things, this is a superstitious behavior. When I've been skeptical about things and say, I don't know if this is going to work. Don't try this at home. It might not work. Okay. So far, that's always worked. Wow. That's really nice stuff. Yeah. And it's not poisonous like this stuff I'm using here. I'm sure in Japanese this says, use in a well ventilated area, wear a respirator. Oh, I shouldn't be saying that, should I? This is not an acrylic, I can tell. It's some sort of significant solvent based something or other. Yeah, and that's really good because I need the time to work it because I'm slow and I get things in the wrong place. So I very much like the 5 minute working time, and I really like to be able to, if I get it on other junk, spots where I don't want it, places where I don't want it, that I can just wipe it off because it's acrylic based, water soluble. I'm definitely going to invest in that, and I'm definitely going to cap this up as soon as I can. This stuff is actually pretty decent. I've been pleasantly surprised. It's the best I have used so far. But yeah, enough of those fumes. It's like that's a really good thing. It is. It's like it has the same consistency then as a spackling compound, which is good. It's really easy to work. And unlike spackling compound, which can it dries out kind of quickly, and it doesn't really disintegrate. It fragments into little fragments if it gets worked too much. So, yeah, Thanks for that. Thanks for mentioning that, because just keep trying to find stuff. This is like the fifth different thing that I've been using to fill in. When the last time I built a model, it was an ME262, which has remained unfinished this entire time. Oh, so it doesn't shrink even. It's like a marvelous, what a thing. Does it sand to a really smooth surface? Okay. That is to say, if I polished it, does it match the texture or lack of texture of the plastic model, so that it really does make it invisible? Um, I was talking about Friday. So I was planning to, when the weather forecast said 20% chance of snow after 1 o'clock. Okay, I thought, well, that's just fine. I'll cut the stream short. I'll finish about noon, get on the road, probably get past where the snow is going to be. Okay, I'm thinking it's probably lake effect. I'm not sure. I could get past where it is. Oh, even better. Okay, so it stays there. It stays green. I'm definitely investing in that. That's a hugely helpful tip. I'm going to work on these guys now. These go together. 3 and 6 and 4 and 5 go together. Oh yeah, Friday. I keep wandering off. It's going to be that kind of day. This is kind of a classic of me just wandering off onto. I was talking about something. I wonder what that was. What I was talking about was that when the weather forecast was a 20% chance of snow after 1 o'clock, I thought that would be pretty safe. I can leave here. I can finish about noon, get on the road, and this isn't. Wow, these parts don't fit. It's just going to take a while. That they're not going together. Well, because of the sprue mark here that needs to come off. I'm not going to stay focused, am I? Well, thanks for dropping in. And thank you very much for the green stuff suggestion. I'm definitely going to get that. Before you go, I'm probably not going to be able to stream on Friday. I'll be explaining why, because I want to tell this long story to fill the time. But I'll be back on sometime after the 27th. Okay, so I'll be gone for quite a while. But please join back in again at the end of January. Your stopping in is really helpful. And thank you for the promos that you've been doing for our Dyson Dungeons on your stream. That's extremely kind of you and very, very helpful. So have a good dinner, and we'll see you at the end of the month. And what I'm doing here is getting rid of the excess plastic that sticks on here from the sprue when I cut it off. And I always do this. I don't want to break it off and create a divot. I want a divot there, because then I'd have to fill it in. And we've been talking about it. Filling things, it's a lot easier to sand something down, and I think it creates a better product to sand something down and then polish it than it is to try to fill in a divot. So when I cut these off the sprue, I usually leave some of it on, and then I file it down close to the surface, not all the way because I don't want to leave file marks. This does cut pretty quickly through the plastic, even the red, which is fairly hard. It cuts through pretty quickly, but it also leaves some pretty deep scratch marks, which I don't want. In this case, I'm going to use some really fine sandpaper, probably finer than I should because it'll take a while. Maybe I might end up I'm going to end up using the 800 grit and then polishing it. Because otherwise it's just going to it'll take way, way too long. So what was I saying? I was saying that on Friday there was a 20% chance of snow after 1 o'clock, which would have given me plenty of time to do at least 2 hours of stream on Friday. Okay, which would have been good because I would then, if I could on Friday, I would sand these down, I would assemble them, I'd get them ready to be primed. And so when I got back, I could really get to painting them and getting this done. That was the plan. And then that was on Monday when I was talking about what I would do. Because on Monday, I was talking about streaming until noon and so that I could get out ahead of the snow. And then yesterday, it became a 60% chance of snow, still mostly after 1. So it was okay. So it probably is going to snow. But I can still get out ahead of time. But then I looked at the weather this morning and it said there's a 80% chance of snow going on to 100, which means it is going to snow Friday. And it's going to actually start Thursday night. That's not good. I absolutely have to leave on Friday. There's no way around it because I need to be. It's a total of almost 11 hours of driving to get to where I'm going. Okay. And I'm breaking that up in half. I mean, theoretically, I could leave on Saturday, but it's still supposed to be snowing all Friday night. Okay. So I absolutely have to leave on Friday. And instead of this first part of the trip taking about 5 hours, it's probably going to take closer to 8 because I'm going to have to drive really slowly. I used to be really good driving in the snow. Okay. I had a lot of confidence driving in the snow and watched other people slide off the road and slam into each other, which is, it's not a good thing when that happens, but it's an even worse thing when it happens to you. I mean, I've seen that happen around me, and luckily it didn't involve me. But as I've gotten older, it just becomes harder to do that. And I need to get where I'm going before it's dark, because driving in the snow in the dark, getting the Star Wars effect with the snowflakes coming at your headlights is just awful. So I wanted to make a short story long, and I succeeded. And the upshot of all of this is that I'm not going to stream on Friday, not unless the weather, if the weather forecast changes again, okay, and it says, this 100% chance of snow all day Friday isn't going to happen, then I will. But the prediction, the forecast just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's just not good. See how these go together now. Okay. So this is how they go together. And the seam on this side is partially covered up by this little fin. This is where it attaches. This side here is where it attaches to the engine cowling or mount. But the issues I have are like up at the front here. Okay. There's a seam there, and I would just as soon it not be there. And there's a similar one on the back. Getting rid of those seams is going to be a little tricky because of the radiator bins. Now, looking at this, it looks like if I cement this well, and as long as I don't get a lot of cement on the outside, maybe I'll use contact cement on this so I can clean it up, is it looks like I can just put like the seam isn't going to show really. And if there's contact cement that comes out through the seam, I can just clean it up with either a toothpick or a needle or my fingernail. This might work. So I only need to clean this up here and here on either side of the fin on the side. That's not too bad. On the back, you can't see the seam because it's buried behind this flange, which is where it attaches. So this might not be too bad. We'll find out. But I'm definitely going to try the contact cement because of my ability to, well, it isn't going to dissolve the plastic, so it's not going to mar the ridges, the radiator ridges, and I'll be able to clean up any excess even later, even later. In this case, it'll be later in the stream, probably about an hour in. Yeah, I'm actually going to contact cement these together after I'm done with this. I'm just going to file this one down. This here goes into the slot on the side of the engine mount. So it doesn't matter if there are some scratch marks on it because it will be completely invisible, totally invisible. This is 3 and 6, so it goes on the right side. I'm going to test fit this in the slot before I go much further because manipulating this after it's been painted and everything is going to be difficult and not. This is it's the right size. Not as in the correct side, but as in, yeah, okay, that fits. That's good. So far, not so bad. So far, nothing terrible. Same thing on this side is file it down until it's nearly gone, and then use the 800 grit and then polish it. And then I'm going to cement them so that if I need to do any cleanup, I can do the cleanup yet in this stream. I wanted to get more done today than I'm getting done, but what happened was the filler, okay, the filler that I used here for the first time worked pretty well, but it shrank, and so it didn't completely fill the circles, and so I needed to put more on, and that's what I did, and then that needs to cure, and then I'll sand it when I get back from my extended time away. But this family obligation is an obligation I just need to do, and so it was like, oh yeah, so there's 11 hours of driving over 2 days. That's not too bad. I've done that kind of thing before. In fact, I've made that entire trip several times in one day. I don't want to do that anymore. I was so much younger then, older than that now. Yeah, that's not how the song went, but that's just the truth. With the snowstorm coming, yeah, I it's just going to be a very long, difficult trip. Friday, Saturday is supposed to clear up. So when I do the second 5 hours of the trip, okay, it won't be so bad, which is good because a lot of it's on 2-lane roads. Definitely do not like driving in those in the snow. It's one thing when someone swerves on the expressway, at least you're moving mostly in the same direction usually, unless they spin around. And 2 lanes, well, it could be really nasty. And so I don't want that to be the case. But yes, that's the long version of a short story to say that I'm not going to be streaming on Friday unless the weather forecast changes again for the better, which doesn't look likely because like every 6 hours they update it and it gets worse. So instead of a 20% chance of snow, mainly after 1 p.m., accumulating to a total of a half an inch in the rest of the evening, it's now a 90% chance of snow starting Thursday night, accumulating at more than an inch. And I just need to give myself way more time, especially daylight, to travel at half speed for the first half of this trip. Fits nicely. Okay. Clean up the work surface. This is part of my resolutions. My 2 New Year's resolutions. One is to not say that word that I say way too often. And I only said it once on Monday, and I did say it once today. And the other is to keep my work surface clear. I'm still working on that. but seems to be not failing in that often anymore. Well, I could repeat my brother's favorite rant. This is not original. Okay, it's my brother, and that has to do with the word often, which now people are saying often. And I looked it up, and that's a legitimate pronunciation. But the way we grew up saying often, and why? Well, this is my brother's rant. It's like, do you say whistle or do you say whistle? How many people say whistle? Or listen to me? People don't say listen to me. They say listen to me. Or the plant, the thistle. Is it a thistle? No, it's a thistle. The T is silent in all of these other words. It's not whistle. It's not listen. It's not thistle. Why is it often? That started like 20, 30 years ago or something, but everybody's saying that now as though that's the correct way of saying it. But my brother will point out that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to say often when you don't say whistle or thistle or listen. And there's probably some other ST words or, TL words. So that wasn't much of a rant, was it? I just thought I'd, throw that out there because it's something to talk about. I've really become a fan of this stuff. This isn't a modeling thing at all. Okay, this isn't a modeling adhesive like this is. Okay. This contact a professional, or this liquid cement for plastic. Okay, and I know a lot of people use CA glues, but for me, at my skill level, although this takes a long time to cure, this contact cement, it offers me a couple of advantages that are really quite important for my level of skill. And my level of skill has a lot to do with my manual dexterity, my ability to line pieces up and hold them and that sort of thing. Okay. That's a thing for me. These are among the advantages of this. And I'm not suggesting that if you're going to be modeling that you use this, okay, because you're probably going to use like professional. It's professional grade. And it's made for models. But I have trouble lining pieces up. Okay. And I also need them to stick together because I sometimes have trouble just holding on to them. And if you have to hold them for a long time before the cement or the glue or whatever you're using actually grips like you would with epoxy, even 5-minute epoxy, you need to just hold those things until the stuff cures enough to get a grip on it. Otherwise, they start sliding around. Okay. So kind of like an immediate grip is really important for me so that the pieces don't go sliding around and falling apart. On the other hand, a little bit of sliding around for me is also really important because I don't always get them aligned correctly. I discovered that, kind of early on, especially with the Apollo model. Less so with the submarine because there weren't too many halves of things that came together. It was mainly just sticking little pieces onto other little pieces. But when it comes to things like this, where they need to grab so that they don't fall apart, while I try to grab onto it, but also gives me a little bit of time to manipulate the objects, so that they're correctly lined up. The other thing is this doesn't dissolve the plastic. And so, as I've discovered, it's possible, like if some of it oozes out, because it is kind of viscous, it's not really thin. If it gets on the surface, it's possible to clean it off without marring the surface of the plastic. The downside is, although it grips quickly, okay, it doesn't really set up completely for like 3 days. It'll still be a little bit movable. It won't fall apart, but it's not totally, it isn't welded. Okay. It's sort of glued. Anyway, twice today. That was the word I said I wasn't going to be using. Nonetheless, I just wanted to explain why I'm using this much more frequently than I'm using other things, other adhesives, because it's just for me at my stage of maturity. It's kind of like a necessity. I was using a different contact cement before I bought this, and that contact cement is really jelly-like. Okay, and what would happen is I couldn't get it onto the surface. I mean, it would just be like, it would stick to the toothpick. It wouldn't stick to the surface where I was applying it. And this is much more liquid. You can see it's pretty sticky. Yeah. Okay, stop sticking. There. This is pretty liquid, and so I can get it onto the surfaces. Another thing I like about it is that, as you can see, I'm putting it on here, and that other part is just sitting there, is that it's designed, its intent is supposed to let it set, just sort of set there for up to 2 hours. They recommend at least 15 minutes, but it could be up to 2 hours before putting the parts together, which is also nice because then I can apply it to one side and set it down. And it, there was a problem because when I set it down, I couldn't get my fingers off of it. That's okay. In fact, it's a good thing because it's supposed to set there, just sit there. I found that it holds pretty well. I mean, it's not like rubber cement. If you saw me earlier, when I was test fitting the pieces for the enclosure for the engine, I used rubber cement, and I was able to just pull them right apart. They stuck, they held together so I could test fit stuff. But then they came right apart for me. Shiny bits, it's glossy paint. This doesn't just fall apart like that. So that's a good thing. Perfectly lined up. Squeeze them together. Yeah. So if a little bit oozes out here in these veins in the the radiator bit, I can take like a pinpoint or a toothpick. I'll take a pointy toothpick. I could just go across and it'll come out. I can even do this later, and I will. I'm going to come back to this a little later and clean that up. But here in the back, that came out really well. Okay, you can't really see the seam at all. You can here, so I'm going to clean that up on either side because this is going to show on the side, and I want these seams here to not show. But the front and the back, that's okay. That's going to show later or not. This side is a little higher. Like when I run it across, okay, it catches there, but it doesn't this way, which means this side is slightly higher than the other. I can't really see it. It's really not enough give. Do anything about it. A little bit of cement that's oozed up through there. I'm going to be able to clean that off. Yay. They better leave this here. It makes a difference which side they're on later on. Well, what I did, in talking about my brother's rant about Liston and Whistle, okay, and how you don't say that. The T is silent, okay. Maybe I hope I stirred up a little bit of controversy that, when you get together with your friends or acquaintances or nemesises or whatever, that you can go on about that. Why not? You always need something to talk about, especially if it's sort of like a thing that's a dispute, right? You need to have something to disagree about. So there's one. It's a fairly innocuous one. I mean, it's not going to make a difference in the world, particularly if you say often as opposed to often. I don't know. It might make you sound kind of weird if you say whistle or listen to me. I mean, that might be an issue, but there's a tiny little thread of that stuck to my finger. But then again, that's just the whole point of it, isn't it? That's the whole point of the controversy, is whether the T should be silent or not. side here. So it does clean up, but it clings, and so you end up, and you probably saw that when I was cleaning up the frame of where the cockpit frame attached to the body of the plane. When I was cleaning that up, the cement came off, but it was like this gooey string that wouldn't let loose, and I had to scrape it up until it formed a little thread and then grab it with the tweezers, and eventually it gave way. Okay, this is going to work okay. So after I stick these two halves together, they're not really halves, I guess. Well, they kind of are, but they're not equivalent in size. And I clean them up just a little bit. There. So I was sticking these together. Just trying to get them to line up nicely. Can't really see any issue. You can see there's a lighter color there. That's where the contact cement is kind of oozed out and needs to be cleaned off, which can be done. It's tedious because it doesn't. You can see a little bit there. It's like a little string, and it doesn't completely come off right away. Right, I'm gonna let those set while I do something else, and then I'll clean them off a little later in the stream. With something else I wanted to do, I don't need these. I was going to use these to clamp them together, but they're holding really quite well, and I don't need them. Stretch. Somebody needs to redeem some stretch points. Stretch. Need a parts here. These are the parts of the engine thing that now have more putty on them, liquid putty, waiting to be sanded off, because what I had in there before, was very nice, but didn't fill it completely. And these are going to set for a bit. And there are two things I'm going to do. One is I'm going to get that's finished box. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to get because I need to stand up, just stretch a little bit. when I get these parts are finished box and put the engine in that because it is in fact finished, and I test fit it, so I don't need to have it out any longer. This is it's finished box. Well, getting crampy today. So this is what it's supposed to look like when it's done. It'll be bigger than that. This is pretty tiny picture. And that's the inside of the fuselage. That's the detail that shows when you lift it off. Okay. You're going to see this in real life because mine came out actually looking pretty good. Not exactly the same colors as the cover of the box, but came out looking okay. So there it is, protectively wrapped. I protectively wrapped it in tissue. So the first part that was done, the first bit that was done was the cart. And because this is a seaplane, okay, it doesn't have any wheels. It doesn't have any landing gear wheels. It has a hull. And if it's on land, it's just stuck. You know, it moves in water, but it doesn't move on land. So it comes with this little cart so that it can be set on there and then wheeled around. So that's the cart. It's the first thing I did. I thought I would do this first because it was kind of a nice low risk sort of thing, and it gave me a chance to practice some detailing. I thought it came out pretty well. Okay, I did a nice job with the wood grain, making it look all woody, and the little loop on the front where the chain or the rope attaches. And these things up here are not wood. Okay, in order to protect the hull, the painting instructions say, well, painted. That was supposed to be painted like sand colored or something. So what I'm guessing is that it was like a fabric, like a really thick felt or something that was put on here to protect the hull and to absorb the water. Okay. And then now the engine, the detailed engine, should put it on camera so you can see it, the nicely detailed engine. That's going to go in this is done box. Dun, dun, dun. And the other thing that's in the done box is the inside of the fuselage. Show that to you. They're great. The machine gun collapsed again. There. Porco Rosso sitting in there, kind of slumped in this chair. There, sit up straight. Porco Rosso actually comes out, so one can see the detail of some of the controls on the inside of the canopy. I'm not going to take him out now, but he does come out. And the instrument panel. Can you see it, Pat? Yeah, there. That's okay. You can see I did a pretty good job of painting that. The hull of this is supposed to be wood, so it's painted this desert tan color. And then I put a little bit of a brown wash on it just to make it look a little darker and get some texture here and there. But I wanted the instrument panel to stand out, so I painted it a darker color, like it's made out of walnut maybe, as opposed to whatever the rest of it is. And then I'm hoping that that's a piece of dust. A little white spot there. The fuel tank, I was kind of careful with that. I got rid of the seams really well. You can't see that there are seams on the sides. And the bands are a different color to hold it down. So, yeah, other than this machine gun keeps slumping over, this came out really, I think, pretty well. It took a long time. anybody who was watching this stream was going, my, this really took a long time. But, you know, I work slowly, and I wanted it to be A-level work, and I think I succeeded in doing it. I think it came out quite well. And now I will wrap it back up in this protective paper towel and put it in the gun box. And I put the rest of these paper towels in here just to keep it from flopping all over the place. You know, this is like the equivalent of those big shipping bubbles. And push this in here and gently, and it keeps it from moving around too much, so it doesn't, if somebody lifts the box or moves it suddenly, it doesn't just go banging around and fall apart. I would just as soon it not fall apart. And that's it. That was the done box, and now the engine is in there and will stay in there until this is done. This anymore. You can see this is the model. It's cart there. That's what happens. It's on land. So the two things yet I'm going to do are test some different ways of making it. Maybe if I can pull it off, I'm giving this like 10% chance of making it look like these exhaust pipes are heated and kind of gotten blued. Okay, that the metal, you know how metal can turn kind of a bluish color. This is the thing. This is where I put little pieces of tape down to hold them down when I spray painted them. And I mean, you can see immediately that 95% of the spray paint was totally wasted. You know, it went down here all right, but it also went all over this and off the sides of the cardboard. I probably could do a better job of not wasting the spray paint. I didn't do a better job. I just probably could have done a better job. Oh yeah, I was going to try some different things. So what I've got a blue wash, the gray blue wash that I'm going to test on here to see if it does anything at all. I've got a gray wash, and all that's going to do is make it look kind of dirty, but maybe that would be okay too, because the exhaust, you know, is kind of a dirty, you know, it creates dirt. What can I say? I've got a pearlescent paint, which will give it kind of a glossy look that I'm going to try. And I could also try one of these speed paints. Which is kind of like a wash. You know, it's a translucent paint. I don't know if any of these are going to work, but I want to try it. I want to see if they might work. The exhaust pipes are really kind of small, so I'm going to test this with a small brush, a little bitty brush. I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to go. So I'm going to start with the blue wash. Which is, it says, for gray armor. I don't know. I'm mixing it up on you can't hear it, which is too bad. But it's a 4E scientific thing. Basically, it's a vibrator thing. It's like when you buy a can of paint at the hardware store and it shakes it. Okay. That's what this is supposed to be doing, is it violently shakes the bottle, mixing it up better than stirring it by hand or shaking it by hand. I shake it by hand anyway. I don't know that that does anything, but it's like that's what you do when you got a paint. You shake it. So there, I did. Sometimes these particular things, when they're opened, will splatter, especially the metallic ones, but sometimes the washes do too. I'm going to be using so little of this, I'm just going to take it out of the bottle cap. It's kind of interesting. I mean, it does darken it. It's a little bit blue. It's kind of not too bad. Closing it with the paper towel is even more important because that's if there's some in the rim, it'll splatter. I guess I'm going to try the gray because it's right here in my hand. Same thing. I'm just going to get some off the bottle cap. The blue wash on there, it's very subtle. This is not subtle. I mean, it can be. It could be put on heavily or just really like thinned out. But all it does is it makes it look grayer. That's not, I mean, maybe that would be okay. I don't know. This blue isn't bad, but it makes it less shiny. And I'd like it. You can still see the metallic through it, but it's did it again. That's twice today. Twice today I have failed in my New Year's resolution to not say that word. This is speed paint, which also is very translucent. And I just want to test it because I think it might give a good blue color. It isn't really designed for this, but who knows? Who knows? Don't know until you try it. Definitely blue. That's almost sort of what I was going for. That's really not too bad. And if it doesn't look good once it's applied, I could always just paint over it. Waste another half a can of paint like I did here, spray painting those little bits. But that it's a nice bright blue. I'm kind of surprised. I wasn't thinking that it would work, but it might. It might just give the impression that I'm looking for. If I can get it, just in the right spots, it would just be where it's overheated, like right on these little bits where it comes right out and then off. I'll have to keep that in mind. That's not bad. And then the last one I was going to try is I haven't used these in a long time. They're kind of cool. They're pearlescent paint. It's green, blue, and navy. Try both of these. The advantage to these is that they would maintain the shininess, the metallic look. They're really highly viscous. They need to be. Sometimes they're hard to work with, but they make a good overlayer. I've used them kind of effectively, like on wings for when I painted little fairy minifigs. There's a white pearlescent. Just using that as a dry brush on it just gave it a little shininess that didn't come from the white paint underneath. It's the blue-green. See, that's not too bad, but it's too light. It's way too light a color. So why am I doing it even more? Just to test. Yeah, it needs to be darker. So this one isn't going to work because it's the wrong color. This pearl navy, the much darker blue, might work. Once I'm done with the testing here, I'm going to clean up the radiators. Or what to do next. I could got like a whole hour left, and since I'm not going to be working on Friday, I suppose I could get some of these parts out. Maybe the vertical stabilizer, the tail. Okay. Maybe I could get those two parts out and cement them together because, those are seam filling in things again too. I could get all of these parts out. I'm not sure I'll get these struts out. I might. They're all numbered. I have to be careful. There's a long instruction here in Japanese that has to do with A9 through 10. Okay. And I don't know what it says, so I need to translate that before I start messing with whatever those are. The little struts that hold up the horizontal stabilizers in the back. What I'm thinking, this could get pretty complicated. I don't know if you can see it. This isn't too bad. But if you've ever seen what I'm talking about, an exhaust pipe, especially if it's been like chromed, okay, and it turns slightly blue from the heat, it isn't a uniform color. And if I were really good at what I'm doing, and I'm not, but if I were really good at it, I would use both of these colors. And it would start out kind of light and then get a little dark around the edges. I'm not that good. I'm going to, okay, the gray is just gray. The blue wash is pretty much just gray. But the speed paint, this was okay, but it's really hard to use. But the speed paint, if it's dry brushed on, actually gives it a little bit of a blue hue. And I'm going to try that. Am I going to try it today? I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm brave enough to do that or not. I might. We'll see. New Year's resolution: keep your work surface clear. And in that spirit, I am. I'm not using these for lessons. Show you what I'm doing. I'm putting them back in the box and putting the box back where it belongs. Ta-da! So I violated one New Year's resolution twice today, which is one time more than it was on Monday. But I have not violated the resolution to keep my work surface clear. I'm even going to take these bottles of wash, since I'm not using them, and I'm going to put them back in the little tray that I'm using to hold them. They're on the side of the bench. Keep this out, not because I want to mess up my workbench, but because that's what I'm going to end up using. I'm going to be trying that to get a little bit of blue color on some of the exhausts here. It changes colors sort of as it dries. That's interesting. Hopefully that will work. If not, then I will get green putty and use that. Put the brush away. Look at that. And then the thing I need to do, keep that there, is clean up any of the excess contact cement that has like oozed out here. Use a toothpick point and just rub it so it's gone. Maybe I will use a pinpoint. This nice T-shaped pin that gives me a thing to grip onto. You can see there's just there's some cement there that will rub off. I say with great confidence as it's really not coming off. I can feel it on the surface. It's just sort of sticky. What I learned earlier on Monday is I was doing the cleaning up like this on the cage around the cockpit. is that it does clean off, but it's tedious, and it doesn't just flake off. It's viscous, so it just kind of balls up eventually, either with the tweezers or it comes off like that just did. Eventually it comes off. But it doesn't dissolve the plastic. So it doesn't mar the surface really. Although that could use a polishing. Well, this is good. This is going to take a while to do this. It's slow, steady, not very challenging work. Uh, and it gives me an opportunity to talk about something if I could think of something to talk about other than what I'm doing. And I'm not thinking of anything to talk about. I could talk about Tom Terrific again. Behind me in the wall, which you can barely see behind me there. Thanks for the new sub. Thanks for joining in. Oh, thank you. Well, I'm really good at just doing mind-numbing, slow, tedious work, like scraping off infinitesimal little bits of contact cement from the surface of the model. I'm really good at that because essentially I am a very boring person. I mean, really boring. And, which is kind of unfortunate in the scheme of things because there isn't any music playing in the background. That's a long story. But, I would, if I were not so boring, I'd have all sorts of clever anecdotes and stuff to talk about while I was trying to get the cement off, which I had said earlier in the stream is, oh, this cleans up pretty easily, and then it doesn't. I used contact cement on this instead of model cement because at least theoretically, it can be cleaned up. I can rub it off. What I seem to be succeeding in is just spreading it around. It is. That's why it's called relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons, because it's that kind of slow moving kind of thing. Although probably more than half the time it's like sanding and cementing and cleaning up and not painting. So the title is a little misleading because it's not much painting. Well, this just seems to be making more of a mess than cleaning up. I'm disappointed in what's happening here, and it's not messing up the surface of the plastic, but it's not coming off cleanly either. And that, because this is going to be painted glossy, it'll reflect. It'll be visible. So I'm just going to keep playing around with this. I know it will eventually come off. That's not a doubt, but it's just like, when will it give up? When will it give up and just come off the surface instead of adhering to it? Then again, this is an adhesive, and its job is to adhere. So it's just, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's just doing it in a place where I don't want it to be. Yeah, You kind of came on late. You didn't get a chance to see the parts that I finished already. But if you watch this episode on YouTube, and maybe you could go back and do that, you can see the bits that I finished and how paying attention to this kind of detail pays off in terms of how the model eventually looks. At least I think it came out pretty well, about as well as anything I've done ever so far. And I think this has been, in terms of quality, the best one I've done. It's not really bragging. It's just that the other ones weren't all that terrific. They were, if I were to grade them, the submarine came out as a solid B. There were parts of it, like the galley, that came out as an A, without a doubt. It came out really well. But there are other parts where just like the missile tubes, just which should have been some of the easiest part of the submarine, didn't come out all that well. A little bit disappointed in how those turned out. But I'd have to disassemble the whole thing and reassemble it to get it any better. It was cleaned up okay. This is a radiator. Okay, so it's got these little veins on it. I mean, ridges I guess is what you'd really call them. And some of the contact cement came out into the ridges, and I'm just clearing it out. With a pinpoint. These are really quite highly visible. They're right on the top back of the engine compartment. These are supposed to be painted gold. For some reason, the radiators are gold on Porco Rosso's plane. I don't know why. I think probably just because it looks really good against the red. Okay, it looks good against the red, and so why not? And theoretically, it's supposed to be spray painted red, and then the radiator is painted gold, but I'm going to do it in the opposite direction. I'm going to paint the radiators gold, and then I'm going to mask it and then spray paint the rest of this red. I think it'll come out better that way. You can see it. There's this little white speck here. That is there it came off. It was a blob of the glue, the contact cement. Okay, this eventually cleaned up. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm just getting the contact cement out of the seam where the two halves were cemented together. And then it's turning white there. I have to wipe that off. Maybe I'll use a little denatured alcohol or some isopropyl or something just to clean those little bits out that are in the seam. As I'm rubbing it, the seam is becoming more obvious because I'm roughing up the surface of the rubber, of the contact cement that's in there. But I'm hoping that when it's painted, it'll be pretty invisible. I don't want to try to have to use filler in there. Really don't. I'd never be able to get it cleaned up. I'm going to use, it's going to be kind of thick gold paint. It should be okay. think this will be okay. I'll see what it looks like after I prime it. I'm just hoping it's okay. That's pretty good. See how this goes. Yeah, this, it's going to show white again where the cement is. Little bits of it are coming off. There's some. You can see the string, contact cement string there that needs to come off. Actually, this is working pretty well. I should just do this with the paper towel and my fingernail. Huh? Yeah, so I'm really trying to get the detail on this thing nailed. It's a Porco Rosso is one of my favorite Miyazaki films, and this is his plane. I got the model kit as a gift. I didn't even know it existed. It was really cool, and it's 1/48th scale, which is the scale I like to work at for model planes. Which isn't, that's the scale I like to work at. I've built like one since I was a kid, but it's more detailed than the 1/72nd ones. It's and a little easier to work with because the parts are a little bigger, so the model looks better. But yeah, I got a 1/32nd Lightning like as a gift. That's a much bigger model. But this is a really cool thing because it's 1/48 scale Savoia S.21 Porco Rosso's plane, and how it couldn't get any better than that, which is why I'm doing my best to do my best on this one. Which is why I'm doing things like rubbing the little ridges of the radiator with my fingernail and a paper towel, getting out the last vestiges of the contact cement. Well, here I'm going to talk about Dyson Dungeons while I'm doing this. This isn't taking a lot of concentration. Dyson Dungeons is a group of family and friends, and we have created an amazing Dungeons and Dragons show that is the main feature of Dyson Dungeons, is our Dungeons and Dragons show, which streams with a live chat on Twitch on Sundays at 2. And all of our previous episodes, there's now over 100 of them. So this is not a flash in the pan kind of thing. It's not one of those, one shots that sometimes show up on streams or YouTubes. This is a serious show. It's been going on for over a year and 100 episodes. So if you if you can't catch it with a live chat on Sundays at 2, all of the previous episodes are on YouTube, and you can also just listen to them as a podcast. They actually work as a podcast, which is kind of neat as well. Our DM, Alexis, has created an incredible world in which we are working, our characters. We do it's a lot of role playing. We take our role playing seriously. We become our characters during the show, which is for us a lot of fun, and I hope entertaining for the people who watch the show or listen to it. It really is. It is just yeah. Sometimes we have just an amazing amount of fun, like we go to a magic shop. Going to a magic shop is always fun. We give the shopkeeper a hard time, and we spend a lot of time rummaging through the discount bin because any retail establishment, even in Dungeons and Dragons, has to have a discount bin. You just do. You have to. It's like a rule of the universe. It's like gravity. You have to have a discount bin if you've got a retail store. So we spend a lot of time going through the discount bin, and our DM is very tolerant and comes up with very funny items that we then pay too much for, or sometimes practically nothing at all. We did, I think at one point, we actually got an item free because the magic shop just needed to get rid of it. And you never know, even though it's kind of a joke item in the sense that it's in the discount bin, sometimes the items that just play an important part in an episode. We have this thing called a box of smells, okay, which we had the original one and sold it. That was wrong, which had like many, many smells. Now we got a knockoff. We have a knockoff version of the box of smells, which isn't nearly as good, but sometimes you just need to create an odor in order to get through a dangerous situation, as like a distraction or something. In some ways, you learn a lot when you grow up with point and click games. And if you can ever pick something up, pick it up, because you want it part of your inventory. It may be essential later. Well, we all grew up with games like that. And so if the DM ever mentions something, we do our best to collect it. We have 2 bags of holding in our party, and at some point they're going to actually be full. I know a bag of holding is like infinite, right? But I think we're picking up enough junk that we're approaching the limits of infinity. And well, they're not really infinite. They do have a limit. But yeah, we have very large inventories. Can't even remember what's in our inventory. Occasionally we spend a good deal of time searching our inventory to remember what's in it. So a little bit of contact cement right on the tip of this, and it's just not coming off. Oh, usually it's my left hand cramp. That'll happen near the end of some of these streams as I'm holding on to something like this. Hand will cramp up. And I know it's, time to stop trying to hold on to things. So Dice and Dungeons is all about our Dungeons and Dragons show. And what this is, we make our own dungeon tiles, which I will, in a little bit, I'm actually going to pull some out and show them off because I like to do that. And I've got time during this stream because I can't really do anything else useful at this point. I'm not going to be able to make any meaningful progress right now for the rest of the stream. I want to make meaningless progress then, I guess. So this stream started because we make our own dungeon tiles and minifigs. We make dungeon tiles on the PLA printers like the ones behind me, and our minifigs on a rosin printer, and then paint them so that they look nice when they go on screen. And our DM said, well, if you're going to be doing that, I'm going to give you this crappy little Ring camera and another camera that's facing me that is old and we can't use in our studio. and a microphone that was left over from something. Okay, I'm going to give you some of this used equipment that isn't good enough for our show, and you're going to stream your painting. And I said, well, that'll be fun because, I drop things like that and I go, oops. And it's pretty entertaining. But then people can see how some of the stuff that shows up on our show, how it's actually created. And that's how this started. What happened, though, is that we ended up with enough dungeon tiles and enough minifigs to keep us going for a while. And our DM said, well, keep the stream going. And I says, well, why? There's nothing to do. And she said, well, don't you have like 700 models or something that you bought when you retired because you thought you'd be doing that? And I said, well, there's not that many. There's probably like 30 that I bought because when I retired, I thought I would be bored and I'd go back and revert to my childhood and start doing models again. And I didn't. I didn't get bored. I kept finding things to do, and I didn't build any models when I retired, which was many years ago now. So I still have 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves full of models that will never be built, and the estate is going to have to sell somehow because they do have an aftermarket value. I know that because I bought them on the aftermarket, and the people who sold them to me got money for them. So eventually they'll go back in circulation, I guess, because I'm not going to get them done at the pace I'm working, that's for sure. So started building models, and the first one I built was a Ed Big Daddy Roth Fink Eliminator because I loved building the Fink models when I was a kid in like 9th grade when they first started coming out. And my mother hated them. And so after I went to college, she threw them all away. But they made repros of them all, reissues. And so I bought them all, and they're all sitting on a shelf over there. Not over there. It's one of the shelves over there. And I decided, well, I'll make one. And nobody watched those streams. I don't know. There's not a Big Daddy Roth cult out there anymore, I guess, which is kind of sad because they're really cool figures. Rat Fink and Surf Fink and Rat Fink on a bike. They were the best models I built when I was a kid because I actually painted them pretty nicely. It's when I learned how to paint within the lines, at least. Anyway, they came out pretty well, and I said that word again when I said I wasn't going to say that word. That's 3 times today. What a failure of a resolution. That's the first one I built. It came out really well. It's in a display case way on the other side of the basement, and no one will ever see it again. And then the next model I built was really a cool thing when I was like in 7th grade. Renwall came out with a model of the first not the first nuclear submarine, the first submarine to launch nuclear missiles. And they made a model of that, and the hull folded down so that one could see the detail on the inside of the submarine, and it's pretty well detailed. Parts of it are amazingly detailed, parts of it are poorly detailed. But I built it when I was a kid, and I did hardly any painting on it. So I was able to build it in like a week, even though there's hundreds of parts. So they didn't reissue it, but I was able to buy them on eBay, and they're getting a complete kit. Okay, unbuilt complete kit is really expensive. So I just bought 3 partially started partial kits, they couldn't guarantee that all the parts were there. So I thought, well, if I buy 3 of them, it's likely to be enough parts for 1 submarine. And it turned out to be the case. That I bought 3 of them and there were enough parts for 1 submarine. That went on. It took me a year to build the thing. A couple of streams at a time. Because the only time I work on them is when I'm doing the stream. Anyway, I built a submarine. Someday I'll show it off just to prove that I did it. I keep saying that someday will happen. And then after that was completed last March, about a year ago, I started working on an Apollo stack model. It has the command module, the escape tower, the service module, and the LEM, both the ascent and descent stages. That was a really cool model. I've almost finished that, but then I got distracted because I'm trying to do something with do something special with the control panels, because the control panel that came with the model is very badly detailed and impossible to paint. So someday I'll get back to that and finish it. And then I moved on to the Porco Rosso S.21. And in between, I've done some minifigs. I did about almost 20 minifigs off and on. Going to set this aside in the box of parts that are yet to be done and show off the dungeon tiles. I like to show these off because they're really cool. We keep threatening someday, I'll just say this because you might watch this on YouTube or whatever, we keep threatening someday of actually producing these for sale, because I think they're deserving of that. These are just samples of just walls, essentially, but we have corners and round corners and windows and all sorts of cool things. This is the rough stone version, and these are printed on the PLA printers as one solid piece. The walls and the floors are one solid piece, so they're very sturdy. Okay, and I've dropped them more than once. That's a shock, right? That I would drop some things. The nice thing about dropping these, there's 2 nice things. One is they don't break when they hit the floor. And the other is that they're large enough so that I can find them after they fall on the floor, which is not the same as some other things I've dropped. The really amazing thing about these, other than that they're totally hand-painted, they're primed, base-coated, detailed, and then eventually washed, usually, is that under this base are ball magnets in the corners. There's 2 little ball magnets in each corner, and that means that they grab onto each other. And unlike some magnetized dungeon tiles, you don't need to put them on a metal surface. They don't stick to the surface, they stick to each other. And it's just really easy. They're not clipped together either, so they're really easy to take apart and put together, and they hold well enough. I mean, you can see that. They grab pretty well, but they also come apart really easily. So that is an amazing feature. These are stone. This is my favorite. These are made to look like wood. Okay. This is a multi-step process. They're also 3D printed just like this with all the wood grain detail and everything. So they're primed and then base coated in a sort of a beigey color and then washed. We experimented with like 4 or 5 different washes and finally got one that makes it look like really rich wood. And then so that it's base coated and then washed, and then the stucco is painted in. And the stucco can be painted stucco color. We did some, I really kind of like it. We did it in green, which is really good for like the inside of a tavern. This is more generic. This could be anything, a warehouse or an office or anything. One of the things all of our tiles have in different ways, including the stone ones, is our doors that work. And that's kind of fun. You know, if you're doing a dungeon thing, you can stand behind the door here. I'll pull out this is a bad guy minifig that I painted a while ago. You know, you open the door and there might be a bad guy hiding behind the door, and you walk through and I go, gotcha. And that can happen during our show, okay? Because we use these dungeon tiles dynamically during the show, and something like this, well, that wouldn't happen if I did this. So that makes the show pretty cool too, because then we have these built up, very elaborate dungeons that are made out of these, and because they're so versatile, they can be reused in many different configurations. We even have fancy stuff like this, which is like a fire mage lair, sigil. Like the sigil is 3D printed right onto the wall and then hand painted to look like that. And this is a cauldron in which we have flames somewhere, which I don't know where I put them because I put them away. A flame will go in there. So the fire mage might go say a blaze or some magical word, and then the flame will show up in the cauldron, again, dynamically. So I just wanted to show those off because this stream started as the vehicle in which these were painted for our show, along with minifigs like the one that I was showing off with the door. There. And as I'm starting to wrap up today, I just want to let everybody know again that I will not be streaming Friday like I was planning, and then I'm going to be gone until the end of the month. I have a family obligation that will require travel. Excuse me. So I'll be gone until the 27th, I think, is when more or less when I'm planning to get back. So I'll be resuming the stream after that. But I won't be streaming between now and then because I won't be here. I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere. Almost nowhere. I'll be in a county in Wisconsin that is so sparsely populated, they have no traffic lights in the entire county. So not going to be streaming from there. And I was planning to stream on Friday, but now the weather forecast just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So instead of light snow starting after 1, and it's going to be heavy snow starting Thursday night, and I've got a long, long drive on Friday. And I want to give myself a lot of time because I'm going to have to go pretty slow in the snow. Yeah, it's just something I have to do. When I do get back, if I remember what I'm doing, and I don't know if I will or not, what I'm going to try to remember what I'm doing is finishing up or continuing to finish up the housing for the motor, the engine for the Savoia. So these need to be sanded down. That's filler in there, filling in little circles that keep showing up in the molding process. So I'll sand that down. I'm going to assemble these 3 pieces, the housing for the motor. I'm not going to install the motor. I test fit that so I can put that in after it's all been painted. So I'm going to put that together, clean up the seams so that the seams are invisible, especially on the back here. All right. And then prime these pieces as well. The inside is painted in aluminum color, metallic aluminum, because this housing is metal, and the inside is not painted the Savoia red. It's just the bare metal. So that's going to be, all these pieces will have, according to the instructions, be painted aluminum color on the inside. And then I'll very carefully mask that off and spray paint the outside the Savoia red. Okay. This bit here, right on the front of this, is a radiator that's painted gold. I'm going to paint that before I spray paint the red on, and then mask it very carefully. And the same thing with these little radiators that go on the side. The radiator part is painted gold, and I'm going to paint that gold and then carefully mask it and then spray paint. The idea is that the edge, the nice clean edge of the masking tape, will be nicer and cleaner edgy, a nicer, cleaner edge than I can accomplish with a brush, painting the gold on after this is painted red. So this is, at the pace I'm going to work, is just going to take a while. Some things are kind of like out of sequence. It's not going together as efficiently as I might if I went in a different sequence, but all the parts need to be done, and eventually this whole thing will be completed. And that will go into the done box, done, and I'll begin to working on the fuselage of the airplane. I might actually, as this is going on, as I'm waiting for like cement to dry or filler to dry or cure before it's sanded and primed and painted, or one part is primed and then I have to paint it and then mask it and then spray paint it. Okay, things could get out of order. They just will. I'll be moving on to this. I will need to translate that because I don't know what that says, but it seems there's a lot of discussion here about these little struts that hold on the horizontal stabilizer. And I want to know what that says. It probably says something like, make sure you cement them in the right order, otherwise it'll not fit. It probably says something like that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have numbered them 4 different numbers. I would think that they're all identical, but I'll find out. So when I finally get back at the end of January and resume this work, that's where I'll be picking up. Is I'll be sanding this down on the inside, and once that's successfully done, I'm going to assemble these 3 parts, prime them all. Well, I'm going to assemble them and then clean up the seams and then prime them. These I can probably move ahead with in terms of priming them after this is sanded. Paint the radiators, mask that, spray paint them red. These might be done before this is done. And then I'll assemble I'll put the engine in place and attach the exhausts. That's kind of the plan. And then I'll be starting to work on the fuselage, and I'll be able to turn the page again and then maybe move on to there's even more instructions that I need to very carefully read so that I know what they're saying, because that's probably an important. There wouldn't be that many words there unless it was something more than just the name of the color that needs to be done. There's decals on tops of decals. This has green and white and red stripes on the tail and the wingtips. And instead of painting it, they gave me decals for the green and the white parts. I don't know how that's going to look. It's going to look like it's got a decal on it. I'm a little bit concerned. I might get really brave and get some, and either airbrush or get some, just mask it, carefully mask it and spray paint it on, because it would look way better if it were painted on than if there were decals. I think what they're saying is that is beyond the skill level of you, Greg. There's no way you're going to pull that off. So just use the decals. That's actually true of these little floats, the floats that go on the ends of the wings. there is a decal that goes on there that if you aren't thinking you can paint it well and keep a nice straight line, you can apply a decal instead. That was also true of the instrument panel. I was able to paint the instrument panel, though, fairly successfully, so I escaped having to use the decal cheat. So when I get to this, I really am going to have to make a decision about whether I want to try to paint on the green and white stripes, because the red is the undercoat. Everything's painted red. Whether I'm going to try to paint on the green and white stripes or whether I'm going to just deal with the decals. I really am not sure. Yeah, that could either make a mess of things or it could turn out to be the better decision. Then there's little bits here, like the windshield. Okay, the windshield has these little stripes on them. Those are supposed to be painted red. That's a really hard thing to do. So that has to be really very carefully masked. This is a tiny piece. Okay, it's not anywhere near this size. It's more like that size, which is very tiny. So getting the masking on just right so that this can be spray painted red and not have it be red all over. Yeah, I've done this sort of thing once before, and sort of okay. Well, this is a challenging model, but so far 1.5 pages of it has gone okay. And this part here, the top half of page 2, looks like it's going to go okay as well, especially since I can assemble this and then put the engine in after it's painted, rather than trying to paint all of this and mask the engine. That would have been, I just couldn't do that. So I'm going to do this, and this painted as 3 separate pieces, install the engine, cement the front of the cowling on, and this I'm not going to cement on at all because I want it to be in a maintenance hatch that can come off to show the detail of the engine inside. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do when I get back, which is going to be about the end of the month. And I feel really pretty badly. I could have gotten, even if I only streamed from like an hour or hour and a half on Friday, like I was planning to go 2 hours, I could have gotten a lot of this done, the sanding that down and assembling the pieces and getting them ready to be primed so that when I got back, I could get the painting done. But unless the weather forecast changes, I just have to say, I'm sorry. I have to drive in the snow, and that's just unpleasant. Yeah, that's it. Here I am, unfinished parts, and a box full of parts that are mostly done as I continue to make progress. And as I talk to myself about the sequence in which things are going to happen and how I'm planning to do this without making a mess. Like painting the inside of this. Okay, I could prime these pieces before I put them together, but I'm not going to do that because when I put them together, right around here is a seam that shouldn't show. So that's going to need some filler and some sanding. And I like to do that before I prime it, because after I prime it, then I can see if I was successful in making the seam disappear. So I'm going to assemble this, not that. That's not going in there yet. I'm going to assemble this and let it set. That's why this gets out of sequence, okay? I cement it together, and then I can't fill it and sand it until the cement is set, and I can't prime it until that's done. So instead of, it takes 3 streams, right? One in which this is cemented together, one in which it's sanded down, then I prime it off screen because I don't have a place to do spray painting here. And then if the priming works and the seam isn't showing, I can paint the interior of it early in the 3rd stream, mask it off, and get it ready for spray painting. And the same thing with these guys. although these can move along a little bit more quickly because I don't have to sand down steam. So it's going to end up taking 4 streams, seriously, just because of the sequence of events. It's going to take 4 streams to put this all together and install the engine. Just that's why I'm probably going to move on to working on the fuselage so that I have something to do while cement is setting and paint is drying. Yeah, I guess that's okay. In fact, that's probably a good idea. There are some of these parts where there's 2 halves. That was redundant. If they're halves, there would be 2. There are 2 parts that are cemented together, and those will have seams along the leading and trailing edge of the vertical stabilizer and the wing. Okay, top and bottom. There's going to be a seam along the front and the back that I do not want to show. And on the floats, again, there should not be a seam showing on the top and the bottom. So while I am waiting for cement to cure and paint to dry, this takes 4 streams in February. I could be moving ahead with preparing these parts here, and here, jumping ahead, cleaning them up, cementing them together, sanding down the seams, and priming them. Even though it's out of sequence, it just makes sense to go ahead and do that. And then while I'm at it, I will contemplate whether or not, rather than using the green and white decals for the stripes on the tails and the wingtips, including the ailerons, whether I'm just going to go ahead and try to paint them. And that shouldn't be an extremely difficult thing to do. It should be possible to mask this, if this is all painted red, to then mask this on each side and paint it probably white, okay, and then mask that and paint the remainder green. I just need to get the right paints. So that'll be a little bit of searching and testing and spending money that if you would go to patreon.com/DysonDungeons and become a patron, you could buy the paint for the stripes. Oh, that was pretty mercenary, wasn't it? Okay. I want to thank Avea for becoming a new sub. Thanks so much. That's really appreciated. We would like to have tens and tens and tens of thousands of followers and subscribers on Twitch and YouTube. So spread the word that this is a very low budget, very slow moving, not really too much how-to, but sort of how-to modeling show, and I get to talk about our Dungeons and Dragons show. Become a follower, become a subscriber. Tell everybody that it's very relaxing. I've been told that people listen to the YouTube or the version of this when they're trying to fall asleep, and that it works for them. I have to take that as a compliment. What else can I say? Thanks, everybody. I'm going to, unless the weather forecast substantially changes and it looks like it's getting worse rather than better, I will be back sometime after the 27th of January, and I will then be making slow, tedious, but steady progress on completing the Savoia S.21 Porco Rosso plane. And in between, I have to say that if I'm waiting for paint to dry or cement to cure, I've got this. This was a Christmas gift. I should show this off to you. This was printed on, believe it or not, on the PLA printers back here. We got some new ones with a really high definition. this is my character. This is my D&D character. I'm a furbog fighter. This is an enlarged version of the minifig of me on the show. The minifig of me on the show comes up to the knees of this. Okay. But this is exactly the same model. It's just made enlarged. And this was a gift. And pretty much what it is it's a desk display version of my character. And it's primed. Whoops. Not very well primed back there somehow. And I'm going to paint it. And I can probably work on painting this while I'm waiting for paint to dry or glue to cure. That would be maybe more interesting than watching me pull some parts out for the vertical stabilizer and cementing them together. And that wouldn't take very long, so I'll still have to. This particular figure is my second set of armor. The first set of armor my figure had didn't fit. It was borrowed from an elf, or bequeathed to me by an elf, and so it was way too small and just sort of patched together. But I got a set of full plate armor. But since then, my character has acquired the armor of Remarden. And Remarden is an old elf, sort of a folk hero or folk foe. There's a whole backstory to Remarden that I'll probably tell when I get back from my trip. But I acquired the antique magical armor of Remarden, which is Tashiranoon armor, like the original armor I had. And rather than just silver, metallic, silvery colored plate, this is magical mithril armor. It's really very amazing. It has the same protective characteristics as full plate, but it is very light, so it doesn't interfere with my stealth, for example. Anyway, it's green. The colors of the Tashiranoon and of Remarden are green with silver and gold embellishments. And so I have decided that since I now own the armor of Remarden, that my plate is not just going to be tones of iron, but is going to be kind of a glossy green. And then things like the rivets, the clasp on the cloak, the edges here, the edges of the armor will be either silvery or I'll have to talk to the DM. There might even be some gold highlights in a few places. Yep. And I have a flame longsword. And the flames, I'll be painting those very flamey. Okay. And then the cloak, I'll be painting green, and I'll try to make it look velvety, or satiny. And it's going to be edged in either silver or gold. Sure, I'll have to ask. I kind of like green and silver better than green and gold. It's got these little curly cues on it, and those will be painted too. So this will be kind of fun to paint. There's a little bit of cleaning up that needs to be done on it. There's little bits of, support structure or things that should be maybe sanded down a little bit. So I needed to show you this. This is something I can work on periodically as I'm waiting for bits of the Savoia to cure or dry, rather than just not doing anything. So that's something to look forward to. It's not exactly a minifig because it's not this big. It's not knee high, but it was a very nice gift, and I'm looking forward to making it look amazing. Okay, that used up the time. Thanks again for joining in, for becoming a subscriber. And I, again, apologize for just having to be gone for pretty much 3 weeks now. But life happens, and that's what's happening here. And so I will be back at the end of January, around the 27th, as I said, continuing to work on the Savoia, and eventually, sometime in 2025, this will be completed. Thanks, everybody. Take care.